everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Dial. I am an author, a speaker, and a life coach by calling, and I'm a new mother by grace. And as you get to know me and watch my videos, you will get to know why I say I'm a mother by grace. My daughter is 2 months now, and so I'm adjusting to motherhood, but it's been a fulfilling journey or chapter of my journey. So why this YouTube channel? I have been a speaker for the past, I could say, five years, and one of the things that I am passionate about is having an impact, a positive impact on people. And I found that speaking is my way of doing that. But then with times and technology evolving, etc., you get to know that you reach people in different ways. And so this has been a long time coming because I've really wanted to start a YouTube channel. But I want to be honest and say I was scared of starting one because firstly, I'm not a technological person, though I do love gadgets, but I'm not a technological person. So having to go through that process, and I guess also gathering the confidence for, opening my space to other people and my home to other people was quite an adjustment, but by God's grace all things worked out and here we are. So that's me. My life is founded on 4 key principles, and this is also why I want to share my journey with you and share my life with you, because I know that there are people who are thirsty and hungry for the kind of content that I'm going to be bringing. And those 4 key pillars are to impact people's lives, to cultivate people's minds, to heal people's souls, and to awaken people's purposes and dreams. And so I believe that, when you have a positive impact on people's lives, no matter what they've been through or are going through, you allow for them to kind of see a different side to darkness or to tragedy and pain. And you do that through engaging in positive conversation and thought-provoking kind of conversation. And once you do that, you then allow for people to not only heal, but to also kind of challenge themselves. And when a person gets to that point, that's when their purposes gets reawakened. And I say reawakened because everyone is born with a purpose. No one is on earth just cause. Everyone is born with a purpose, but most of us walk with our purposes sleeping, because either the purpose has been suppressed by things you've gone through, words that have been spoken upon your life, and then your self-esteem gets affected. Sometimes your identity is not very clear. Sometimes it's socialization, where we grow up, etc. So different things impact where we are with purpose and whether we kind of find our way through purpose or not. So yeah, so that's basically the core of what this channel is going to be based on. So every conversation will be based on those key pillars. And I just want to share my life and share my journey with you, and also just kind of learn from you as well, because I don't know it all, and I'm also navigating this journey. But I think with every layer of myself and my purpose, I get to know God even more. Motherhood has also been quite a teacher in who God is and what unconditional love is. So with every chapter of my life, I kind of see God and see purpose being unraveled in a different dimension. So who is Usmamkele? Usmamkele is, wow, why am I speaking in third person? I am a daughter to Spokazi Dial and Luvuyo Yankee. Both of them passed on. And I'm a sister to a number of people. And I'm a granddaughter as well. And I tend to say I'm the typical child raised by a village because I've grown up in different provinces and in different family contexts. I've experienced different households, but also different ways of doing things, speaking different languages. And I think at the core also has been being exposed to Christianity, but in such a diverse way. So I've been to different kinds of churches because I've moved around a lot. So I've been to ZCC, I've been to Amapostile, I've been to Methodist, where I grew up in the Methodist church. I can relate to your SDA. Like I'm literally like a fruit salad, colorful. So I've moved from province to province, and I have kind of experienced life with a lot of hardship. But when I speak about hardship, I don't want people to hear it as, oh my gosh, another pity party. Because I believe that everything that I went through, God's hand was in it, and God was there, and He's allowed for me to come through the different things that I've gone through so that I could do what I do, which is a great privilege, because there's nothing as beautiful as knowing that your life's purpose you're called to speak life upon other people. I don't think there's any greater gift than knowing that your life is to empower other people, whether in spoken word, whether in written word, whether you're engaging on a one-on-one or you're speaking to a group of people, but to know that God has given you the gift of being able to impact people through the kind of gifts that He's given you is quite beautiful. So I don't take that for granted. I went to school. So I went to primary school in Grahamstown, and then I moved to the Northwest, and then from the Northwest, Lichtenburg, I moved to Umtata, and then from Umtata I then moved to Durban, and then for high school I went back to Grahamstown and started my grade 8 in Grahamstown right up until my grade 12. And then after that I went to Rhodes University and completed 2 degrees there. I dropped out in the middle of, at the end of my 3rd degree, which was a master's, and I was just like, okay, life is being real. But we'll also talk about that later in the channel. And so my journey with purpose, I think, probably started when I was in varsity. It started earlier on, while I was in high school, because I was just this, I don't know, I don't want to say hyper spiritual person, but I guess out of lack of a better word or description, I'll say I was one of those hyper spiritual people, and I used to be very motivational and very inspirational. So I was one of those friends where I'm always the one encouraging people and kind of giving them hope, etc. And so I think I started noticing that when I was in high school, but it wasn't a thing to me. It was just like, okay, this is one of the things that you're good at, and that's that. Fast forward to going to varsity, I start my first year, and while I am in my first year, so I started motivational speaking really when I was in varsity, and I would go and speak at different schools, etc. And then, but at that point in time, my spiritual being or my spiritual journey was not like, it wasn't strong. It was just like, okay, I grew up in Sunday school, and then throughout my childhood, as I've said, I had experienced different kind of churches and been exposed to different kinds of ways of worship. And so that that kind of background also framed my interpretation of who God is and just how you engage. So I could relate to someone who says, I'm from a charismatic church, but at that point in time, actually, most of the churches that I'd gone to were more traditional. So I only got to get connected to the charismatic church or way of doing things later on, in varsity. So anyway, I'm in varsity, and I'm this deep girl, but like I'm just born in deep. I'm just like, okay, like this is a part of who I am. And then I meet my ex, who at that point in time was doing her PhD. And yes, it was a woman, which is something I'll talk about later on. So she was doing her PhD, and I was in my first year. And so when we meet, I think we connected more firstly on a friendship basis. And what I was realizing was this person like knew the word. She was, very firm in her identity and who God says she is, etc. And I found it really confusing. But with time, I got to learn certain things. And that's probably where my relationship really got solid with God. And I find that a lot of people ask me many times, how is it possible that you're in a relationship with a woman and then you learned, like you got deeper spiritually through a woman? And the truth is this, right? Beyond just dating a woman, for me, what the things that I learned from her then, probably were the foundation of everything that I am today in the spiritual sense. So I learned that worship was not only, you're not a Christian because you go to church every Sunday, but you're a Christian because you should identify yourself as a child of God. And what does being a child of God mean? It means you have to have a relationship with God. And what does a relationship with God mean? You are communicating with God. He speaks to you, you speak to him. He becomes the core foundation of your life and everything that surrounds your life. And you just are on a constant pursuit of who God is. And so from that relationship, I learned how to pray. I learned how to ask God questions. I learned that I could ask God questions. I learned that I could believe that God had created me for greater things. And for the most part, when I started in that relationship, I went to varsity not even thinking that I would go past my first year, because I didn't have the confidence, firstly, that I could do it. But secondly, going to Rhodes was so intimidating because Rhodes University is very small. And it's as if, when you are from Grahamstown, which is a really, really small town, it feels like it's for a certain type of people and not the type that I am, or the kind of people who grew up like I grew up. And so from the onset, like I was just like, okay, this is gonna last 6 months, and it's gonna be the end. And another thing that affected that was that when I started first year, we had, what do they call that thing? Where all the first years gather. We were at the Settlers Monument, and then I think it was the vice chancellor at the time then spoke about how 50% of the new students would not make it past that year. And immediately I was just like, 50% as because I don't see this happening. And so fast forward to then later on in the year, in my first year, and I meet this person, and then I get to know that, God can actually pull me through in this entire degree thing. I honestly didn't think that I was going to go past my first year, let alone past the first degree. And so I got to know God there. There's a scripture, I think it's 1 Corinthians, I've forgotten, it's not Corinthians, I'm not certain, but the scripture says you've been enriched in all kinds of knowledge. And that is probably the scripture that I held on to from my first year right up until I left Rhodes University, because I had not believed for as long as I was alive that God had given me life and enriched me with all kinds of knowledge, that I could be an excelling student, that I could do great things, that I could go beyond my expectations. I had never anticipated that. So my spiritual journey really started there and solidified from that point onwards. And I started really seeking God for myself. I started praying. I started asking God questions. One of the biggest questions that I had was why bad things had happened to me, because I lost my mom when I was 13, going to 14, and 7 years prior to that I had lost my dad. And my dad died having never meeting me, or apparently he used to come and visit when I was like a small baby, but I don't have memories of that, so I'd never seen him. And so he died when I was 7, and then my mom then passed on when I was 13. I went around, I think, carrying this thing, Yoba, I'm carrying a level of darkness, ne? And that was even from childhood. I wasn't the kid who played with other kids. I didn't want to play with other kids. I was always isolating myself, so instead of playing with other kids, I'd be writing. Like, I'd sit in a corner and I'd just write. I was also very timid, and so I used to get bullied a lot as well. And so, going into varsity, I am now getting into womanhood, and I was struggling with many questions about, where was God when all of this was happening? And at that point in time, I hadn't even unraveled the many things that were to be unraveled, that were to be revealed to me later on. So I start this journey, and I start questioning God, and I start engaging in His Word, and I start, really seeking what His desires are for me. And eventually, in getting to know God in more depth, that relationship faded away, and then a new chapter was now beginning in my life. And so I go through varsity, I finish my first degree, I go into honors, I finish my honors, and totally by God's grace, like God's favor, right through. And then I start my master's, And it's when I was starting my master's where this thing was really like aching me. And so it was a mixture of two things. I had been diagnosed with depression when I was in high school. I think I was in standard 7, grade 9 at that point. And so I had struggled with depression right through. And then the depression started coming back after when that relationship was ending. But then I was able to kind of be okay, and just like surface level being okay. But when I started my master's, there were so many pressures on me. One was I'm the first in my family to go to university, not only to get a degree, but to do a postgrad degree. So there were a lot of expectations on, you need to start working. And not only you need to start working, but I think the level of success was also measured by, at this particular age, you should be doing this. And that is not only pressure that I placed on myself, but it was pressure that society had placed on me. It was pressure that just even in the church, you could tell that certain people at a particular age, they've reached a level of success, though you don't know the details. And so within my family as well, there was also that expectation of, okay, you can't be studying forever. And so my depression started to surface while I was doing my master's. And then I decided, actually, I'm going to look for a job. I mean, a number of things had happened in my master's, that second year master's year. But then I decided I'm letting go of this master's. I'm going to get a job, and yeah, life is going to begin. So I get a job in Johannesburg, and so I drop out of the master's and I moved, but I didn't deregister. I just left at that point in time. I left and I came to Joburg, and life was about to begin. I didn't know that that is where God wanted me at that point in time, in a point of isolation and being alone and not having kind of the support structure that I had when I was in the Eastern Cape, with friends, some family, and things that I was familiar with. And in my first book, I speak about how in the Bible there's a story of, is it Noah or Abraham, where God says, go to a country I will send you to. And I felt that was me. God was saying, I'm sending you to this foreign land so that you can get to know yourself. And while you get to know yourself, you will get to know me. So I get to Joburg, I start working. And later on in the year, this is 2014, later on in the year, then this thing, so the depression had not gone away, but it was much better. And then this thing came back of, man, there's something that's just not connecting, you wanted a job, you got the job, but you're not happy. And then I was like, God, you need to give me answers. So I started doing midnight prayers mid-year in that year, 2014. And I started doing midnight prayers, and I said to God, you need to reveal yourself to me, and you need to get me to this level that you want me to go to. But at the same time, you need to give me the answers, because something is not connecting. And that is where everything that I have become and am becoming started. I started having visions and dreams, visions of speaking to multitudes of people, and like dreams of speaking to a lot of people and having people come ask me questions, etc. And at that point in time, it really just did not make sense at all, because in my head I thought abantu who have multitudes of people are pastors, and mna andingumfundisi, and andibawela uba ngumfundisi on top of that. So I really found it confusing. Up until I consulted with one of my spiritual mentors, and I said to her, I'm having these dreams and visions and I don't know what they mean. And she said to me, at the right time it will reveal itself. And so, okay, I continued, but kukho lento nje of I felt incomplete. Then the dreams and the visions stopped, and I was now struggling to sleep. And then memories of my childhood started coming back. And at first it was just normal memories of my childhood. Like it was just like, oh, when I was in primary school, this happened and whatever. And up until that point, I really had not thought about my childhood at all. So memories of my childhood start coming back, And then this one night, I'm struggling to sleep. And as I'm struggling to sleep, and I mean at that point in time, I am battling between what I would now define as spiritual encounters and depression at the same time. So it was like a wrestling in my spirit. So I'd go to work having not slept and try and be normal, and then drive home and I'm weeping all the way home. I would eat myself sick, basically. And anyone who knows me at that time, like I was much bigger, because I was just feeding myself. Like I was just like, yeah, feeding the hurt and all the confusion. So then this one night, had bought a large pizza and a bottle of wine. I'm a sucker for cheap wine, just so you know. And so I got myself a bottle of wine, and I got home and I ate. And the wine had been like a routine thing, and it had been a routine thing because I had started to numb myself with alcohol because I wasn't sleeping. So that I could get some hours of sleep, I'd get myself to drink. Then ngobusuku, I'm in bed, and it's around midnight. I'm in bed, and then I start smelling dirty socks, like really dirty socks. And then I'm at that point I wasn't even exercising, so I couldn't even say it was my socks. Like ndiyabheka while I'm in bed, but it feels like I'm not at my place, even though I'm at my place. Then this thing takes me, like I travel to my childhood, and when I look to my right, I can see that I'm lying on the floor, and what I'm seeing is, for those who might know, a bedi, where you could see the bottom part of the bed or underneath the bed. So I can see that there's this kind of bed, and I'm looking underneath this bed, and there's like shoes underneath the bed. And then when I look up, I'm realizing, no man, this is a next door neighbor's house, right? And what that memory was one of my experiences. So the smell of the socks had a combination of dirt as well as semen. And then I saw this guy who was my next door neighbor, and who was not even a few years older than me. Like I think he was in high school at that point in time, if he hadn't left high school, or probably grade 11, 12 if he hadn't just finished. And so I see him and he's wiping himself with these socks, and then he wipes me with the sock. And that was my first memory of my childhood experience of being sexually abused and raped. And from that point, from that memory, all the memories then came back. I can't tell you how difficult it was for me to go through that, because at that point in time I am alone. I was living alone, and because I'm this friend who is known to be strong, it was so difficult for me to tell any of my friends at that point that this is what's happening, because it was confusing to me. So from that point in time, the memories then came back, and when I traced, I then realized that he was not the first one to actually abuse me, but he was the third, because firstly it was an uncle who we are not related to, but he's a close family friend. Then it was a friend's brother, and all this before I was 9 years old, and then it was this guy. So basically it was happening concurrently, because I'd be at different places. So I'd be at my great grandparents' house at times, then I'd be at my grandmother's house at times, and so it happened during all of that transition. So it depended on where I was, and I was being abused by 3 different people basically at the same time. I struggled a lot with accepting that that was my reality, and I struggled a lot with believing that there would be a God who would allow for that to happen to me as a child. But then, say he loves me, say he's got a plan for my life, and yet on top of that he had also taken my parents, and I mean, though I moved around a lot, it was not fun and games moving around a lot. My mom at that point in time was an alcoholic, and so every time I moved around, it was because she could not take care of me. And so I was just like, but God, like, you who would allow for that to happen? I mean, I hadn't even reached 9 years old at this point in time, and you were allowing for these people to terrorize me. So in questioning God, at that point in time, I then started writing a letter to myself, but I was writing the letter trying to fill in the gaps that I had, because not everything was clear at that point in time. And with different memories coming, I was just like, I wanted to figure out, okay, at this point, where was my mom? Where was everyone, etc. And so I started writing myself a letter, backtracking my experiences as a child, but also trying to console myself. That letter became my first book, My Pain Perfected. And in writing the book, God clearly said to me that I'm called to speak to dry and dead bones, and from that point onwards my speaking really became like serious, and everything that I have now become, which is the author, and then subsequently I then studied a course in life coaching. All of it started from those experiences. And so this journey of my life is basically what has led me to opening this channel, starting this channel, but also wanting to impart what I've learned about God through those experiences and throughout a lot of other things that I've come to experience, and what I've learned about purpose as well. And so I just want to share life with you and share my experiences and hear from your experiences, and hopefully, we just navigate and kind of meet each other at a point where God would really do amazing things in our lives through through the conversations that we're going to have. And I'm looking forward to more and more of me sharing life with you and your feedback as well. So please comment and let me know what you think about what we're about to do. Yeah. Goodbye.